In the darkest corners of Greek mythology, there exists a figure so terrifying that her very image was carved into shields and temple walls for protection. A creature whose gaze could end life in an instant, transforming flesh and bone into cold stone. But before she became the monster, she was something else entirely. This is the story of Medusa. And the truth is, far more disturbing than the legend. The ancient texts describe Medusa as one of the three Gorgon sisters, but unlike Spheno and Euryale, she was mortal, vulnerable, and once she was beautiful. She served as a priestess in the temple of Athena, goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare. The position demanded absolute devotion, purity, a vow of chastity that bound her entire existence to divine service. Then Poseidon saw her. According to the Roman poet Ovid, whose Metamorphoses written around 8 CE provides our most detailed account, Poseidon pursued Medusa relentlessly. She rejected his advances repeatedly. As a priestess sworn to chastity, she belonged to Athena's service, not to the whims of gods. But Poseidon was the god of the seas, the earth-shaker, brother to Zeus himself, one of the three most powerful beings in the cosmos. And he wanted her. Ancient sources vary on the details, but the outcome remains consistent across every telling. Poseidon took her by force, inside the sacred temple, on consecrated ground. The violation was twofold, an assault on Medusa's body and a desecration of Athena's most sacred space. When Athena discovered what had happened in her temple, her rage was absolute. But here's the disturbing part. She couldn't punish Poseidon. Poseidon was her uncle, one of the original Olympians. They were equals in the divine hierarchy, both children of the Titans, both with their own kingdoms to rule. Athena had already lost to Poseidon once, in their famous contest for patronage of Athens. Though she'd won the city, Poseidon had flooded the plains in retaliation, and none of the other gods had stopped him. The politics of Olympus were clear. Gods didn't punish other gods, especially not ones as powerful as Poseidon. Athena, despite her wisdom and strategic brilliance, despite being Zeus's favorite daughter, couldn't touch him. So she cursed Medusa instead. The transformation was absolute. Medusa's hair, once her pride, became a nest of living serpents, venomous vipers that coiled and struck at the air, forever writhing, forever awake. Her face twisted into something that defied human recognition, and her eyes. Her eyes gained a power that would define her existence, the power of petrification. Anyone who met her gaze would be transformed instantly into stone. No gradual process, no escape. One look, and mortality crystallized into eternal stillness. Ancient sources offer different explanations for why Athena punished the victim rather than the perpetrator. The most common interpretation, found in Ovid's text, suggests that as a virgin goddess, Athena viewed any intimate activity in her temple, even forced, as defilement that required punishment. The temple's purity had been violated, and someone had to pay the price. Other scholars point to the power dynamics of Olympus itself. Athena couldn't punish her uncle, a god of equal or perhaps greater standing, but she could punish a mortal priestess. The mathematics of divine justice were cold and clear. Medusa was powerless, therefore she was expendable. Some interpretations try to soften this, suggesting Athena's curse was actually protection, making Medusa so dangerous no one could violate her again. But the ancient texts don't support this reading. Ovid describes Athena's actions as punishment, as wrath directed at the desecration of her temple. There's no mercy in the transformation, no kindness in the exile that followed. Medusa was simply in the wrong place when a god decided he wanted her, and when another goddess needed someone to punish, she was the only one available. But what does that curse actually mean? Let's examine the mechanics of Medusa's transformation. Ancient Greek art depicts them as dozens of snakes, some say hundreds, emerging from her scalp where hair once grew. These weren't decorative, they were alive, hungry, angry. Imagine the constant movement, the weight of them, the hissing that would accompany every moment of consciousness. You couldn't sleep deeply. The serpents never slept, their cold bodies shifting, tasting the air with flickering tongues. Some scholars suggest the serpents represent the chaos of violated sanctity, the corruption of beauty into horror. But in practical terms, They served another purpose. Even if someone approached Medusa from behind, even if they somehow avoided her gaze, the serpents provided an early warning system, a defense mechanism that never rested. The ancient historian Apollodorus wrote that Medusa's face became so hideous that the very sight inspired instant death. But modern interpretations suggest something more complex. The petrification wasn't just supernatural punishment, it was a weapon, a deterrent, an absolute barrier between Medusa and every living thing. And that's the insidious brilliance of Athena's curse. It wasn't designed to simply punish Medusa, it was designed to isolate her completely, to ensure she could never be touched again, not by gods, not by men, not by anyone. She became untouchable. Literally, the curse that protected her also imprisoned her. Medusa's exile led her to a remote island at the edge of the known world. Ancient sources place it beyond the realm of ordinary geography, a liminal space between civilization and the wild unknown. The island itself became a gallery of death. Statues littered the shore, dozens, perhaps hundreds, all frozen in their final moments. Some ancient texts describe them in unsettling detail, warriors with weapons raised, faces locked in expressions of rage or fear, travelers with hands outstretched, perhaps pleading. Some turned while running, their stone bodies captured mid-stride, forever fleeing something they could never escape. But who were these people? The myths label them as victims, innocent travelers who stumbled upon Medusa's lair and paid the ultimate price. But examine the evidence more carefully. Most statues depicted in ancient art are warriors, armed men, hunters. They came seeking her. They came with weapons. They came because somewhere, someone had placed a price on her head, or simply because killing a monster brings glory. Medusa didn't hunt. She didn't leave her island. She didn't terrorize villages or prey on the innocent. She simply existed in her exile, and people came to destroy her. And when they arrived, when they set foot on her island with swords drawn and heroic intentions, what choice did she have? Close her eyes and let them strike? Or look at them just once and turn them to stone before they could reach her? Every statue was evidence of her monstrosity. Every petrified warrior proved she was dangerous, evil, deserving of death. But every statue was also evidence that someone had tried to kill her first. The island became her prison and her fortress. The stone sentinels stood guard not by her command, but as testament to the endless stream of violence directed at her. Generation after generation of men who believed that slaying the monster would make them heroes. None of them stopped to ask what made her monstrous in the first place. While Medusa endured her exile, something strange occurred throughout the Greek world. Her face appeared everywhere. The Gorgonian Medusa's severed head became one of the most widely used protective symbols in ancient Greece. It appeared on temples, shields, coins, doorways, even wine cups. The image was called apotropaic, meaning it turned away evil. Think about the logic. The Greeks feared her enough to hunt her. They called her a monster. They told stories of her horror, and then they carved her face onto their most sacred spaces for protection. What evil could be so terrible that only Medusa's image could repel it? Some scholars argue it's simple, sympathetic magic fight monsters with monsters. But the ancient sources suggest something deeper. Medusa's face didn't just scare people. It was believed to freeze evil in its tracks, to turn malicious intent into immobility. The curse that destroyed her life became the greatest protective symbol in Greek culture. She guarded temples without worship, protected soldiers without consent, watched over homes she would never enter, all while trapped on her island, surrounded by death, unable to experience any of the safety her image provided others. The cruelest irony, Medusa became the protector she never received. Perseus came to the island with divine assistance. The gods equipped him thoroughly. Athena, the same goddess who cursed Medusa, provided a polished bronze shield. Hermes gave him winged sandals and a sword forged by Hephaestus himself. Hades loaned him the helm of invisibility. The hero had every advantage: divine weapons, supernatural tools, the guidance of the gods themselves. Medusa had serpents and solitude. The myths describe Perseus's approach as tactical genius. He flew above the island, invisible, using the reflective shield to observe without being seen. He studied the patterns, waited for the right moment. He found her sleeping. Some versions say she was dreaming. Some say she was simply resting in the darkest part of her cave, away from the statues, away from the constant reminder of what she'd become. Perseus descended silently. The helm of invisibility kept him hidden. The winged sandals made no sound. He approached from behind, using the shield's reflection to position himself. One strike, clean, precise. Medusa's head separated from her body. The ancient texts don't describe if she woke, if she had time to understand what was happening, if she felt pain, or if the sword was so sharp that death came before sensation. But from her severed neck, two beings emerged. Pegasus, the winged horse, burst forth fully formed, and Chrysaor, the golden giant, followed. These weren't her children in any traditional sense. They were entities that had been gestating inside her body since Poseidon's assault in the temple. Trapped, growing, waiting. The curse hadn't just transformed Medusa. It had imprisoned these beings inside her, adding one more layer of violation to her existence. In death, Medusa released what had been forced into her, but she gained nothing from it. Perseus took her head, and here's where the story becomes truly grotesque. Even severed, Medusa's power remained active. The head continued to petrify anyone who looked at it. Death didn't end her curse, it just made it portable. Perseus used her head as a weapon. He pointed it at a sea monster threatening Andromeda's stone, at King Polydectes who threatened his mother's stone, at anyone who stood in his way. Medusa's trauma became a tool, her curse became a commodity. Her severed head became a trophy passed between heroes and gods. Eventually, Perseus gave the head to Athena, who mounted it on her shield, the Aegis. For the remainder of Greek mythology, Medusa's face adorned the goddess's armor, still working, still protecting, still powerful. The goddess who cursed her priestess for being assaulted now carried that priestess's severed head into battle as a weapon, and this was considered honorable, heroic, just. 3,000 years later, we still depict Medusa as the monster. We put her in horror movies, video games, fantasy novels. We use her as a symbol of feminine rage or dangerous beauty. We analyze her symbolism, debate her meaning, reinterpret her story through modern lenses. But consider the actual sequence of events stripped of mythological embellishment. A young woman is wronged by a powerful figure who faces no consequences. The institution she trusted punishes her instead. She's transformed against her will into something society views as monstrous. She's exiled to isolation. For years, possibly decades, she lives alone, and everyone who approaches her either wants to kill her or dies accidentally. Finally, she's murdered while sleeping by someone considered a hero. Her body is mutilated. Her severed head is used as a weapon by her killers. At what point in this sequence is Medusa the monster? The ancient Greeks understood something we often forget. Monsters aren't always the ones who look monstrous. Sometimes the monster is the god who commits assault and walks away. Sometimes it's the goddess who punishes the victim. Sometimes it's the hero who murders a sleeping woman and is celebrated for it. Sometimes the monster is the society that sees all of this and calls the woman the problem. Medusa's image still protects us. You can find her face in museums, on jewelry, tattooed on skin. The Gorgonian endures. But perhaps what she protects us from isn't external evil. Perhaps she protects us from forgetting, from allowing these stories to be sanitized and simplified into easy lessons about heroes and monsters. The serpents writhing in her hair remind us that trauma doesn't disappear. It lives, it moves, it demands acknowledgement. The stone gaze reminds us that some stories freeze us in place, forcing us to confront uncomfortable truths about power, violation, and who gets to be called the monster. And her face, that supposedly hideous face that inspired such terror, reminds us that sometimes the things we're told to fear are simply the things we refuse to understand. Monster, victim, protector. Medusa was all three, but she was never given the choice. And that might be the most horrifying part of all. What do you see when you look at Medusa? Drop your interpretation in the comments. And if you want more mythology that challenges what you thought you knew, subscribe. The ancient world is darker than your history books admitted.